I got you up there. This is Rob. He's the founder of the Worm Bucket. So, Rob, I want to say thanks for popping up once I see your
Oh,
face.
hey. Sorry, I didn't realize my thing was covered. Hey, AJ, how you
No,
doing?
I'm good, man. I was thinking about you. It's been a while, man.
I know it has. It has. We've been in winter hibernation mode.
I hear you. I hear
But,
you, man. But you go
how's
ahead. I'm
things
sorry.
going with you?
It's going well. Been busy. Weather's kind of like cold, hot. It's weird how the weather's not been consistent in the Midwest so far.
Yeah, we're really excited about how things have been going this year. So for folks that don't know, my wife and I own Worm Bucket, and it's really mostly my wife that runs the company for the most part. But I'm just there as the worm feeder and compost harvester, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I have the worm bucket. I stopped using it, but now I'm using it again. I'm kind of like, you get it's a worm bucket. I have to have it going, and I'm gonna use that for like
Yeah,
my
you,
workshop. So it's a traveling worm bucket for me.
Yeah,
It's,
we've had the most success, AJ, and that's why when I saw your topic today about being in an apartment,
mm-hmm.
the worm bucket's a relatively small bin. It's 2.5 gallons, and so a lot of people who live in an apartment, it works well for them. And the other thing that we've had a tremendous amount of success with that we love is schools and classrooms because the worm bucket is small enough to be a really good teaching tool. And the winter time for folks that are in the compost bin business is pretty, it's pretty slow, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had some record months in January and February this year, um, because folks that are involved in community education related to sustainability have started to buy the worm bucket to use as a teaching tool. So I think we started it off, as something that people, my initial vision for Worm Bucket was think New York City for the people that are living in New York City that don't have access to a backyard composting space, that just don't really have the room for that. Um, and that's really the whole reason I designed the worm bucket. And it's, I think, for people that are in a small space that are looking for a way to compost without smells. If you're a one person or a 2-person household, I think the worm bucket is a good option, or just any other small box. But
Mm-hmm.
definitely you can compost in an apartment with worms, and you can do it without any smell. And so I love the topic of the show. And I think for the tips for people that are looking to compost indoors or in a small space, you just have to be conscious of your inputs. How much are you feeding your bin? And then the other thing that I highly suggest is every time you feed, add shredded paper, because that shredded paper, it acts as both an odor absorber. That's your carbon, your browns that you're putting in there. So we like to feed the worm bucket and then put shredded paper. And then, when it comes time to feed again, we'll take that shredded paper out, just kind of in our hand, and put the food down on the surface of the bin and put that shredded paper ball right back on top. And over time, you'll notice that that shredded paper ball gets smaller, and then you can add more dry shredded paper. But it really does a lot for your bin because, one, if it's too moist, if there's too much moisture in your bin, that constant application of shredded paper, it's going to soak up that moisture in the bin just by being in there, right? So you'll put it in as dry paper, and then you'll notice after a while it's kind of damp paper. And so I really think that that's one of the big keys to apartment composting, is always making sure that you're adding dry shredded paper to your bin. That way it absorbs that smell. It kind of acts as a layer on top of the bin to kind of keep any odors from
Mm-hmm.
permeating out. It kind of gets trapped under that shredded paper. And then, of course, the natural part of it being a carbon source, it's going to absorb some of those odors. And so, yeah, definitely. Well, make sure you use AJ's link there if you're going to get a worm bucket. AJ has been one of our affiliates in the past, and we really appreciate the videos that you've done on the worm bucket, AJ. So I didn't mean to steal the show there, but that's just some tips for folks that are looking to compost in an apartment. Definitely, the shredded paper helps a lot.
No, you're awesome. This is an open forum, open mic. I appreciate you stopping by. But question for you, share a little bit about, what the worm bucket consists of. Can you get it on? I mean, you can get it from a link, I'm affiliate link with Rob and his wife, but you also have access on your website and Amazon as well.
Yeah, we've been on Amazon now for just under a year. This will be our first spring with Amazon, and so that's really been interesting. You can get the worm bucket on Amazon, and it ships directly, fulfilled by Amazon. So that's been exciting to kind of see that come to fruition and see what's happening there. But yeah, we designed the worm bucket to be a small indoor worm composter. It's about 2.5 gallons. I'd say it can hold anywhere from 1/4 pound to 1 pound of worms. And yeah, it's perfect for kind of a 1 to 2 person operation. And the thing that's interesting about it is that we kind of designed it to do everything. And that is, you can also make your worm tea directly in the bottom bucket. So it kind of has a top bucket that lifts out, and you can harvest your castings and then make the worm tea there. And it's got a spigot there to pour out the worm tea once you've brewed it. So it's definitely, we're happy to have been able to design and produce it, and we're about to order our third order. So we've sold almost 2,000 worm buckets, and so, but yeah, sold almost 2,000 now, and we should have we're ordering our next 1,000. But it's kind of crazy to think that there's 2,000 worm buckets out there in operation, and awesome. I like to think about how much compost is being produced, right? That's thousands of pounds of compost that's being produced around the country. And even if it's just, what I love about it and what I love about composting is it's an individual action that we can all take, right? We can all, we can say, all right, this could go in the landfill where the thing about composting as an alternative to a landfill is when you throw something in the trash and you seal it up, it rots in the plastic bag because there's nowhere for the gases to go, right? And so when it eventually breaks out, it's going to be released as the greenhouse gas known as methane. But when you're putting it in a worm bucket or your other bin, you've got the worms and the composting process, like I was just talking about, the carbon from the shredded paper, all that allows those gases, instead of going off into our atmosphere, they're absorbed back in through the compost, the soil and the inputs that are in there. And that's going to help prevent greenhouse gases. So, really, it's an individual action. And some people may say, gosh, this is just, my banana peels and my, onion ends and skins, and what does that really do, right? But honestly, like I was saying, we've got 2,000 of these out there, and we're able to harvest. We constantly use it, and we're constantly harvesting from it, and so it's just really cool to see what would be trash and actually become that usable garden amendment. And I don't know if you've ever used worm tea, but if you have, people that do it and do it correctly will know that there's really some, powerful punch of microbe activity that really allows plants to flourish when you not only as a soil amendment, but also spraying it directly on the plants, and that what they call foliar application, which allows some of those micronutrients to come in through the leaves of your plants. So, if you're able to follow us on Instagram, worm.bucket is our Instagram handle. And Audrey is always making really cool videos about how we use the worm tea and use the worm castings. And so it's just a really cool kind of learning thing. And so if you've got houseplants, I think a combination of having an indoor composter and houseplants in an apartment, people who might not get access to green space on a frequent basis, having that those plants and having that green space in their apartment, I think is really something that people cherish, and I think it's a really good thing.
Mm-hmm. And on your channel, it's the wormbucket.com. You have it on YouTube as well. And,
we need to get back on YouTube. We kind of fell off on the YouTube. It's so tough, managing just all the different channels and content. And we really pretty much, we do, I would say, a daily post on Instagram. And we really don't do much on YouTube. I'm going to try this summer or this spring to do that. I need to be more dedicated on that. But Instagram is really kind of our primary social media channel, for better or for worse. We probably have better views on YouTube, but the uploading is a little easier for us on Instagram. That is what it is what it is. And there's so many good people talking about worms on YouTube, like you, AJ. You're we're kind of ask ourselves, like, what do we have to add to the conversation? And where, why should we choose which channel to post on versus another? Hi, Peggy.
Yep.
Hi.
With your kit, can you tell us, Peg, with your worm bucket kit? I have videos that I promoted your system, but can you tell like someone that's watching what to expect in the kit? Just to help.
Yeah, definitely. I wish I would have. I should just go downstairs and grab one. Hold on. Well, let me go grab one real quick.
Sounds good. Hello, Peggy.
Hi, AJ. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for stopping by.
Good. How's your weather?
It's warm. It was in the 20s. Now it's in the 40s. It's going to go back in the 30s. So it's all over the place this year.
Yeah. We've had 2 days of rain, which is, we haven't had rain for a while. So 2 days of just not sun. The tourists are ticked off.
I understand. Yeah. They need to come to Iowa. It's warmer.
Yeah. Well, 70 degrees, but rainy. Yeah.
I hear you.
But the sun's hot now, so that's good.
Exactly.
So this is my worm bucket. This is a live system that it's going right now. So this is a worm bucket kit. It comes as a kit. It requires no tools to assemble. It's fairly well pre-assembled. You just have to put on the spigot, and then it comes with a brick of cocoa coir that we use to start the bin the first time. And you put the brick of cocoa coir in the green bucket with some water, and then it'll rehydrate all that cocoa coir, and that can kind of be your first substrate that your worms are going to live in. And so we go in, we put it in the yellow bucket. And the yellow bucket, it's kind of dirty here on the bottom, but you can see it has holes. And so it's kind of like a self-draining bucket. That's why we designed it like this, because when you're in an apartment, one of the worst things that you can have happen is for the bin to get too wet. And so that's really, this whole thing was designed to be the beginner bucket and be kind of foolproof for people. So it's a little bit different, and it's small. Like it's not the bin for everybody and all purposes, right? This is someone who's in an apartment that wants to compost, but doesn't really, or in a house, somebody that's in a small situation. I wouldn't recommend this bin for somebody that has a family of 5 and has a ton of, scraps that they make every week. Like, this is a smaller bin meant more for individual composting. But we just, it's got a lid that's, fairly, it's not the easiest to get off, but that's by design.
I know, I experienced that too. That's good.
Yeah, we're working on a kind of a version 3 of this, or version, I guess maybe it'd be 2.5, but that has a little bit softer lid. But you see how I was just talking about the shredded paper there.
Yeah.
So the shredded paper, it feels fairly moist. But yeah, so we've got our worms down in there. Can't really see it too well without dumping it all over the place. But we've got worms or shredded cardboard there, and and we just feed the bin and put our shredded cardboard, and it's got these vent holes here that help the worms, get oxygen and breathe. And then any excess water is going to drain to that bottom bucket, which can be, kind of thrown off. But then when it comes time to harvest, right, you can just take the yellow bucket out, and there's a little bit of liquid in here. I can't really get it. You can see just a little bit. That's really only should be in there, right? There shouldn't be standing water in the worm bucket at any given time unless you're making the worm tea. But yeah, once you take that yellow bucket off, you can brew your worm tea inside the green bucket, and then you've got your spigot there to fill your spray bottle or fill your watering can, and you can use the worm tea just as you would with water. So it's kind of like an all-in-one thing. And we're working right now with our manufacturer for this next run, AJ. We're trying to make the handles. We kind of, we're not product designers. And also when you're making a product from scratch, it's not easy. And so you kind of have to work with what you've got. And so, it costs like $25,000 or $50,000 to make certain molds and things. And at the scale of only selling 1,000 worm buckets in a year, there's just not enough money to be made to spend $50,000 on a mold or whatever. So we've just had to work with the constraints of what we have. But one of the challenges has been how hard it is to get that lid open. It's funny. Some people say, "Well, I love it because the worms will escape," and then other people say, "Oh, well, I broke a nail on it." So I don't want that, right? So we're trying to we're kind of looking to design like an easy opening lid, maybe make like a silicone lid. So that's the next iteration. And then we're trying to work with the manufacturer so that the bottom handles come up even with the top handles, so that it's not just two buckets stacked on top of each other. But I'm not certain how easily they're going to be able to do that. We'll see. They tell me they can do it, but unfortunately, I'm a little skeptical. So we may have to do another round similar to this one again. But yeah, it's tough when you're at a small scale to do customized products, just because the molds and things cost a lot of money. So we took like kind of 3 different products and then smashed them all together and stacked them and did a few things with the way the holes are and stuff, and I've come up with this. But it comes as a kit. It's got instruction guide, it's got perlite, and it's got cocoa coir, and also it comes with a feeding guide of like how to feed, what to feed. And so it's kind of an all-in-one kit. And so I think that's where we've gotten that traction with educators in classrooms, because they get it. It's got the instructions. They can, add the water to it. And like families are really liking it because they're able to, do an activity. It takes maybe, I don't know, after you've rehydrated the cocoa coir, maybe it takes 30 minutes to set up. The core hydration process might take a few hours, but it gives kids something to do. And they get to put the worms in, and then they can come feed the worms every week. And it's just, I think we've really hit something there with families and schools. And so like we sold 35 last month to a school system out in San Diego. And then just this past week, we sold 30 to a school system it was actually like a recycling for a city, like a city recycling committee or whatever, and they are giving them to the classrooms. And so I think that's really cool as an educational tool. And obviously it's still a composter, right? It works. And about every 3 months, we're able to harvest between 4 and 5 pounds of compost from it. And yeah, it's just, kind of a small compact thing. So when I saw your thing, hey, can I start a worm bin in your apartment? This right here was designed to fit under your kitchen sink. It really will fit under the kitchen sink. If you go on the website, wormbucket.com, you can see a picture of it sitting under somebody's kitchen sink. So with that comes the downside that it's not ginormous and it's not going to yield you, a garden bed's full of compost, right? But if you want to make worm tea and you want to spray that on your house plants and you want to make enough for, composting at your own small area, yeah, it definitely fits the bill there. And it's got the handle so you can carry it around with you. You can even harvest directly out of it if you want to, and, spread it on your plants. But all in all, gosh, can you believe it? This is year 2 of this, almost 2 full years that we've been going with the worm bucket, so, I'm just, not to say that I'm surprised, because I knew when I came up with it, like, this was a need in the marketplace, but wow, I'm just so thrilled that we basically came up with this idea during COVID. And I was like, it all started because my sister-in-law, she was saying, well, I would love to do worms, but we live in an apartment. And so like, until we buy a house, we can't keep worms. And that is when I thought to myself, okay, there's gotta be something to finding a way to make it compact. And that way people can, take it with them if they move or whatever. And so that's what we came up with over time. And here we are 2 years later, 2,000, almost 2,000 sold. We've sold about 1,900 so far. We have about 100 left. And so, yeah, I'm kind of nervous because I only have 100 left and we're about to start the spring, and, it takes a few months to produce and get them here. So I'm kind of, crossing my fingers that I'm able to have enough stock to survive the springtime. But that's really our biggest, March through May really is our best part of the year. So, but yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, I'm glad you stopped by. But yeah, you go ahead. I got to say something when you're done. Go ahead, Peggy.
What's the cost?
$79.99 with shipping. So that includes shipping.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, shipping is about $15 depending on where you live. But yeah, it's $79.99 with shipping. And that includes the core, everything but the worms. And you kind of get it all in one spot.
Good deal.
I think so. I think they provide a lot of value. I think there is value there, definitely, because it comes with the instructions, it comes with the feeding guide, and it comes with, perlite and a brick of cocoa core.
I saw when AJ was doing it. I saw when AJ had his and was watching his progression with it, and I thought, well, that's I have 6 worm beds. And 1 inside and 5 of them out on my porch, and they go from little shoe boxes. I have 2 little shoe boxes and a 3-gallon, and then 2 waist high oblong planters that I couldn't get anything to grow in them except worms. So I turned them into worm bins, and then I have a traditional can of worms from Tumbleweed that I've had for 14 years. So it's interesting. I was thinking that you could probably market that to college students during the summer. That used to be when I was college age, that it looked more like you were going to a seminary or you were going to the convent. Your room was very austere. And now, the rooms that kids have going to college where they can actually put in, a queen size bed and have all sorts of things and what we would think of as luxuries, they could have, a worm bin as well to, help with all those late night snacks and, good things that worms shouldn't eat, but you might think about extending it to that.
Thanks for the suggestion. Yeah, definitely. We love sharing it, and we love sharing composting. That's my thing, is compost any way you can. If you saw our Instagram 2 days ago, we've got a post of us doing cold composting, right? So just like you, we have an indoor bin, we have outdoor bins. I think people who compost recognize that there are different applications for different types of composting. Some maybe a bit more of a bulk method, like my cold compost bin, that's a base of my soil, right? And so we're putting, every time I mow the grass, I'm filling the whole thing with that. Sure. And that one's, maybe you could call it leaf mold, cold composting, whatever. Lasagna method. I don't even know what you call it, but I don't really touch it. I just kind of layer it on, and I have one of those bins, big plastic ones that the sides come off at the bottom, and I can just shovel from the bottom directly, And so as time goes on, I've got that rich black, maybe it's leaf mold, maybe it's, compost. I don't know what you call it, but it's dark and rich, and my plants seem to love it. And, we do that as well. So our motto is compost any way you can. And, for some people, it'll be a worm bucket. For some people, it'll be a do-it-your-own bin. It'll be, the other bins that are out there in the marketplace. The main thing is just understanding the importance of it and how to do it successfully.
Sure. Sure.
And you're a big teacher of that, AJ. Thank you so much. I don't want to take the any more of the mic here, but what were you about to say?
No, you're fine. No, you can speak as long as you guys want. Also, your worm kit comes with a reusable worm casting bag. You can use that. So thank you for that. And also, I wanted to say thank you for taking time out to invent this. You stepped out of your comfort zone. You made something, and you're definitely keep trying to find ways to make it better. So thank you, kudos for that. But yeah, no, this is a great system. And like Peggy says, yeah, college students can get it. Schools can use it for their classrooms. Individuals can use it for their apartments. So yeah, like I said, I'm glad that I definitely had the opportunity to show your product and let other people know that there are other options as well.
Thanks, AJ. And you've done so much teaching people how to grow and how to keep worms and make your own soil and all that. So we love your channel, and the consistency that you have. I really admire it, because it takes a lot of dedication to be consistent with posting and do these streams. And, I really love that about you. And I am really in awe, because I'm one of those people, call it ADHD, or I can quickly jump from one shiny object to another, and and I think it shows in some ways, right? We started at YouTube, we had a little bit with that, and then we stopped posting, and that consistency is really key to growing an audience. And you can tell how much your audience really respects you and really likes to engage with you. And I think that's a real big testament to the consistency of your message. And I think that's, I love that about you, AJ.
Yeah. And like you just said, we connected and you popped on, and, we both are, and Peggy we're a great resource. We don't give the BS to people. We're legit. We keep it real. And that's what I like about this community. We don't, try to con people over. It's like, if we don't know the answer, we'll tell you. If something's wrong, we'll try to make it better, but we can't help other people. They have to give us, corrective feedback or criticism so we can improve on things. So, that's what I like about my channel. The community is just great. We have great entrepreneurs. We have great beginners. We have just great gardeners, and a diversity of other people that are in this community. And I definitely want to say I appreciate both of you as well, because you kept me going too with words of encouragement. So thank you both, and the viewers as well.
You're welcome. You're very authentic.
So yeah, I mean, if you guys want to go ahead, add more feedback. Like I said, this is an open mic kind of discussion, you know. But like I said, I just felt that we make excuses why we don't start worm farming, and like I said, it once you do it, you know, you find out that, man, why did I wait so long to start this? Because you know that there are great benefits to raising worms. You know,
there are, and especially folks that live in an apartment, you know, kind of keeping on that topic. You know, I think a lot of people are worried like about the mess or the smell. You know, those are things like, is this something that's gonna, you know, is it gonna smell? And I think really it won't, so long as you understand that you know what you're doing, right? And that takes a little trial and error, right? Like, let's talk about one of the biggest nuisances of an indoor bin, and that is going to be fruit flies, gnats, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes, and I've had this happen. Like, I'll tell you, one of the things that killed me from not posting videos is we were doing these time-lapse videos of worms breaking down things. And those are really cool videos. I think one of them we got almost 1 million views on. But I had a cantaloupe that I was doing a time lapse on, and man, it got this huge outbreak of fruit flies in my house. And it was the worst. And my wife was like, "This is awful." Like, it just. And that partly came because of the nature of having to like video with the lid off and all that. Like, it didn't create the environment that would have been what a typical person would be doing with a worm bucket or some other thing, right? So because the lid was off, because I just had it there, I didn't have any carbon over it or anything like that. It made it so that the fruit flies, you know, were really prevalent. Well, if I had, you know, buried the food a little bit and then put shredded paper over it and all that, I wouldn't have had that same problem. It was really only because it was so exposed that I started getting that. So, like I was saying with the shredded paper, that can help guard against the fruit flies. But one of the things that is really important that I think that I suggest, and this is kind of how we do it in our house, is we'll take our scraps and we'll put them in a big gallon Ziploc bag. And we then put the bag into the freezer. And then we'll put that in the bin at the end of the week. So it's like we collect the food and vegetable scraps as we're cooking at home. We put them into there. And when it goes into the freezer, it does two things. One, it's going to kill any sort of insect eggs that might be already there. That's the thing that we don't realize, is that these eggs and stuff, it lives on our produce already. So it's not so much that it was caused by the bin or anything like that. It wasn't like, oh, I had a worm bin and now it grew gnats, right? It's no, that the banana peel had these eggs, the fruit fly eggs on it. And then the conditions were right that they, you know, that they hatched. Well, if you put that in the freezer in that Ziploc bag, the scraps, it's going to kill those eggs for good. And so then when you put it in your bin, it's going to thaw. And that freeze thaw process actually makes the food kind of mushy. So if you've never, I'll give you an example of something. Broccoli stems, right? We all love broccoli tops. And when we've got a big chunk of a broccoli stem, right? If you stick that directly in your worm bin, it's probably going to stay there for a while. If you've ever noticed, it's like a trunk. It's like a tree trunk, you know, it's going to stay there. So if you chop it up a little bit and throw it in the freezer, it's going to freeze. And then it's going to re-thaw. Well, so she says, don't get me started on that. Well, hey, try this frozen method, because you're really going to, it takes literally hardly any extra step, right? You just throw it in the Ziploc, and, you know, I got one of those reusable Ziplocs, or maybe a Tupperware bowl or whatever you want to use. But that freeze thaw process is going to break down the cell walls of the food, and it's going to make it softer, and it's going to digest faster. And that's the other misconception. A lot of people don't realize this, but your worms are not eating the food. It's weird, but the worms are, it's not like their mouths are literally chomping at the food. Okay. Your food is breaking down, and the composting, the natural decomposition, your worms are actually feeding on that. They're feeding on the microbe activity, all the
bacteria.
The bacteria. So the more, once a bin is going, it consumes food, and people really think, oh man, I got a pound of worms. That's a pound of mouths that are eating this food. But that's really not it at all. It's actually the microbe activity and the bacteria activity that's going on in the bin that causes that process to really happen. And it looks in front of your eyes like the worms are eating the food, but it's really the bins, composting happening, and the worms are feeding on that bacteria. So, I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I apologize if I'm, missing it a little bit, but, I've got several years of experience working with worms, and, so I think that freeze thaw process really helps that decomposition process, because it kind of thaws back out, and then you'll notice that it's not quite as hard and fibrous as it was before. It's softer, and it's going to break down faster, and then the worms are going to eat it faster. So if you've got things like carrots and stuff like that that worms just don't do super well with, that because they're not actually chewing on the carrot, right? So something like that freeze thaw process helps break down those cells a little bit, make it more easily digestible for the microorganisms in the bin, which then the worms feed off of, and they give us that great vermicompost.
No, that's great feedback. So I always ask, anyone that I do a Q&A with. So for you, Rob, why should someone start worm farming?
Well, I think it really comes down to two things. One, individual impact on climate, right? Just it's a mental shift in your brain. Okay. It's more about the mental shift than anything, right? It's a great first step to being more sustainable. Okay. Like, I know that I can't, I'm my 1 pound of food scraps or whatever in my own home composter, it probably is negligible at the end of the day, right? But I'm doing it. I'm choosing, rather than going to the landfill, I'm choosing to be more sustainable, right? And then the second piece of it is, if you're a home gardener or a plant enthusiast, you're going to get a really awesome byproduct, which is this thing called worm castings and worm tea. So it may start off for you as just an individual effort to be more green, to be more eco-friendly, to be more sustainable, and try to compost. But the output is, wow, I'm going to know what went into my soil, right? That's the other piece of it, is controlling your inputs, right? I know I don't go to, I mean, sometimes I do, right? But when we go to Lowe's and we buy a bag of Miracle Grow or whatever, we don't really know what's in it. We don't know where it's been. We don't know how it's stored. We don't know, did it get hot and kill all the microbe activity off? We don't really know that, right? But I do know my worm bin and my cold compost pile and all that. Like, I know where it's been. I know what's been in it. And I can kind of control that. So if you're a gardener and you want to have more consistent results, I think that's it, right? You're not introducing something that you have no knowledge of the supply chain or whatever. You're like, I use my own perlite, I use my own compost, I use sand, and I use a few things, and I make my own soil mixes myself. And I know exactly what's in all those pieces and parts. And for me, I feel good about that, because then when I'm using it in my garden, or when we're using it in our house plants, we are able to know where it came from and what it's in. And, especially if you're somebody that's a rare houseplant person like my wife. I mean, guys, we've got houseplants that we've paid $65, $75. I mean, we're cheap, right? We're doing it on the cheap. There are people that are buying $400, $500 houseplants. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody like us, we don't have a ton of money. And when we go and buy a $65 plant, I mean, that's a pretty big investment, right? And so we've got to know that what we're doing is going to, we don't want to kill a $65 plant. I worked hard for that $65. I don't want to, I don't want to kill that Thai constellation or whatever we've bought by, just taking whatever source we want and putting it on there, right? So we have a formula that we make, and we know what's in our worm tea and all that sort of stuff, and we know how the plants react to it, and we have total control over that. And so if you're somebody that's spending money to invest in this hobby of house plants, I think that's one aspect of why I would say it would be a good idea to make your own vermicompost. You're going to get those benefits to your plants, and it's crazy. I mean, you can check out Audrey's Instagram and you can see where like we add the worm tea and we do a time lapse of it, and like it's sprouting out new growth within like 2 days. I mean, it's just you can really see that. And I don't feel like if you're adding, say, we'll use the bad word, Miracle Grow or something like that, your houseplants, they can die from that. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't really know what you're doing and you pour something like that on there, you can burn them up. You can kill them. Or you do something like worm tea, which is, a little bit, you can still see positive benefits from using it. And it's not as harsh because it has lower NPK levels, and we can get into all that. But there are uses for fertilizers and things like that. But for us, we don't do much of that. We mostly focus on just organic inputs, So we might add a little bit of compost or something at a certain part of the year, but it doesn't, it's not, we don't generally put fertilizers and stuff, especially on our rare house plants. We mostly just use worm castings and worm tea, and they seem to thrive.
Yeah.
No, that is great feedback. And also another thing about, you said you were talking about worm tea. Should you use your worm tea within 24 hours, or how often do you use it?
Yeah. Another thing, people like I don't want to ever disparage any other business, because people are working hard, they're trying hard, but there are a lot of companies that like to sell worm tea on Amazon, and I just like, guys, this is why you need a worm. I mean, I usually don't like do a hard sell with the worm bucket, but right, this is why you need a worm bucket, because when you're buying that jug of concentrated worm tea and it goes, I sell on Amazon, right? So if you're buying a jug of worm tea on Amazon, it's coming from, say I made a jug of it and I sent it to Amazon. It's riding in a hot box truck all the way to the Amazon fulfillment center. It's being processed by the robots and all that stuff. And then it goes and sits in a warehouse shelf, may or may not be heated and cooled to any, certain temperature. Then it's going to come back out via an Amazon truck or a UPS truck or FedEx truck. So it's going to go through a hot and cold, cycle or whatever. It could be out in 100-degree heat. And so what's actually happening to that microbes, right? If it's in a truck that's 103 degrees in Arizona, do you even know what you're putting on your plant at that point? You really don't know. Has it gone bad? Is it just inert, right? Have the microbes just died off? And now I don't really know, because I haven't looked at slides under a microscope to know, right? Or anything like that, to know like, okay, does the microbe activity die off after a certain period of time? I have no idea. But yes, we make a batch of worm tea and we use it within like 24 hours, pretty much. So we'll make, but I mean, when you're making it one, say 2 gallons at a time, that's really all you need. It's enough to water with it. That gets us, 2 or 3 watering cans worth, and then maybe like 6 or 8 ounces worth in a spray bottle. And then we, mist our plants with it, and you're good. So that's one of the, if you want the worm tea, the worm bucket is a really simple solution to get that, or make your own that looks similar or whatever. But, I think definitely within 24 hours, and I really wouldn't buy. I mean, to spend $65 or something for a jug of worm tea off Amazon or whatever it costs, I just don't know what the efficacy of that is. And I mean, trust me, I sell on Amazon and we're looking for other products that we could sell. Audrey and I have talked about, man, should we just bottle our own worm tea and sell it? But just as a moral, not moral, maybe that's too strong a word, but just as a practice, I just don't really think that it ships well. And I just don't really think it's a great idea to buy it pre-made, personally. I just think figure out a way to make your own worm tea and do it fresh. I mean, the whole point of worm tea is it's super aerated, right? So if you're buying it and it's been made a month before, like, how's that really help you? It's lost its oxygenation. It's lost all the things that we love about the worm tea. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on why we make it and why we use it immediately.
And one more question about your wife, Audrey, correct?
Yeah.
Is she does she market stuff, or she's in the sales, or how? I know you guys are partners because you're a couple, but what is her part in your business as well?
She is the business. I mean, I invented the worm bucket in terms of, like, I was the one that manufactured, I work with the factory, and I'm punching buckets. We make all these by hand, right? It comes in different parts and pieces, and it gets assembled in our kitchen. You can see it on our Instagram. I mean, we are like a husband and wife couple in that regard. So my job is to punch the buckets, at night after dinner. But Audrey is the business. She chooses the marketing. She chooses the direction of the influencers and who's going to be an influencer, and she's the one that's taking the phone calls with the schools and selling. And I mean, this is her full-time job. So she used to have a corporate job in sales, and then she left to do Worm Bucket full-time. And so we're really lucky to be able to do that. And I work from home. I'm a tech guy, so I actually have a real W-2 job. And but Audrey was able to leave her W-2 job, and one day I aspire that maybe I'll be able to leave our W-2 job and we can both do Worm Bucket full time. But yeah, for now we've grown it to the point to where Audrey can do that solely, and we're just kind of seeing what may come. But yeah, she's texting me actually right now to come down and have lunch. But yeah, it's really great to have a husband and wife business like this, because we're able to stay home together and we're able to do what we love, which is gardening and houseplants. And at least one of us is able to have an income from it. And, that has been, it was a dream of ours to like get to that phase, and we're now at that phase. And it's not always perfect, and it's not a lot of money. I mean, trust me, we've only sold 2,000 worm buckets, so it's not like we're, rich by any means, but it is a living that we're proud of, and, be able to do it. And we hope that we'll continue to grow. One last thing is we actually got accepted to Shark Tank last year.
Wow. Congratulations.
But we ended up getting canceled at the last minute. We made it through 3 rounds of Shark Tank.
Okay.
And Audrey and I traveled out to California, and we, did all that, and we made it through the 3 rounds. And then we even signed contracts with the production company and everything, like, so that they could use our logos, and we designed the sets. I mean, everything up until we were supposed to get our flights to go and tape with the sharks. And then at the last second, they called us and said, we've changed our decision, and you're not coming anymore. So we may try that again in the future. But yeah, we were nearly on Shark Tank. But, without Audrey organizing all that, and, You know, I mean, she's done everything from make me a life-size worm suit. You know, I wear this like 7-foot tall worm suit when we go do community events. And we just have fun with it, you know, like I'm just, there's no, you know, it's fun. It's a fun business, right? And I think that's the part that I love the most is like, how can you do something that you love, which is, you know, create or be creative, you know, while doing something that you enjoy, which for us, that turned out to be gardening. You know, I grew up gardening since I was a kid with my grandma. I mean, I'm talking when I was 7 or 8 years old, I grew up. And, you know, my grandma's passed now, and bless her heart, she didn't really know. Like, she knew how to garden based on the old ways that people were taught, right? But now when I think about some of the things she instructed me to do, I'm like, Grandma, no, how in the world did you ever get anything, you know? And thankfully now with YouTube, we've got people like you, AJ, that you know, now we know so much more and have so much more access to information. We can have these wonderful, bountiful harvests that, you know, but you know, Audrey and I both come from a background of gardening with our grandmothers. And so we just love that we're able to kind of continue that tradition and then to be able to do it for pay, you know, in some way, I think is really fun. I've got to run, AJ. Thank you so much for letting me talk on the stream. And
thank you for stopping by, Rob. You know, I wish you and your wife, you know, nothing but the best. You know, and you know, if you need help, Peg and I can get your business up for 33% and 30% royalties.
I love it. I love it. Hey, we'll grow together. Thank you so much for the invite, and we'll be in touch.
All right, brother. You take care.
All right.
Bye, Rob.
Bye.
That was very funny.
So yeah, Peggy, you got the floor. Go ahead and add anything else you would like, because
I thought this was just going to be a verbal. I didn't realize it was going to be a visual. So you caught me with rollers in my hair, so I went running off.